welcome to Talk Ag to Me, the podcast dedicated to improving ag literacy around the globe. I'm your host, Brennan Black, and once again, I'm alone for this episode, but that's all right. We're going to have some interviews for you guys hopefully pretty soon. I've been trying to find some time to make some phone calls. It hasn't happened yet, but we're hoping by next week or the week after, we're going to have back on track interviews all the time, bringing in some more FFA kids, some more professionals, some more farmers, and just, getting things back to how they used to be. But for the time being, it's just going to be me. You're going to have to listen to my voice. I'm sorry about that, but we're going to just keep going with more of those, I guess you could say, interesting fact episodes, which I tend to enjoy quite a lot because I get to learn a lot about sides of agriculture I never knew about. I mean, like the county fair episode is very cool, and we're just going to keep kind of going with that same theme. So, so I think the best way to kind of go about this new schedule for the time being is just going to be we're going to have maybe we'll have like a fun fact episode every now and then. I'll bring in an FFA kid or somebody to help me talk about issues and stuff, and then I'll bring in professionals for the professional interviews and that sort of thing. Kind of like how we were doing before. It's just, gonna be a little bit different, but we're gonna work with it. It's all right. So that being said, leading into today's episode, this is an episode that I've been meaning to make for a very, very long time, and the reason for that is because this is an episode that kind of counters a lot of arguments I've had with people about agriculture overall. I've argued with people about it. I mean, arguments with people like the animal rights activists or the vegan, I don't want to say activists, but the people who support the vegan lifestyle, or our former mayor that I had on not this episode, but this podcast. And nothing wrong with any of those people as far as they go as people, but they just, a lot of the things that they believed about agriculture weren't entirely correct with how things actually are. I mean, just to give you an example with the mayor, and not to throw the former mayor under the bus or anything, but one of the main arguments that we had was whether or not his job depended on agriculture. That was a huge argument that went on for weeks with the entire town, and him and I actually discussed it face to face, and it just really what it boiled down to was he didn't say specifically that his job didn't depend on agriculture, but he wouldn't admit that it did depend on agriculture, even though it does. Every job depends on agriculture in one way or another. And so people were sending him all kinds of lists of, if you drive a car and your seats are made of leather, then your job depends on agriculture, and, all of these things. And so it kind of inspired this idea in my mind that I should make an episode dedicated to all the different ways that agriculture impacts life that we don't really think about. And so kind of the first part of that concept is just going over all of the different byproducts that we take off of animals and that sort of thing whenever we process them, and how those byproducts are used in ways that we never really think about. And so this is also an argument that I've had with animal rights activists and people that support the more vegan lifestyle, or that try to reduce the amount of animal byproducts in their life. And this is a conversation that I've had with a good friend of mine that she used to be a vegan. She tried the vegan diet for a while, and she just couldn't do it. She just wasn't happy, and she wasn't happy with her diet. She wasn't happy with her lifestyle, and she couldn't stick to it. And so her and I were talking about it, and we both kind of agreed that if you're gonna go vegan, one of the main things that the vegans always preach is that you have to go all the way. You can't just stick to the diet and say that you're supporting the animals. If you're going vegan for the reasons of protecting the animal life, if that's your motivation for going vegan, then you have to go all the way with it. You can't wear leather coats. You can't drive a car with leather seats. You can't you can't use makeup that was tested on animals. You have to go the whole 9 yards. You have to go all this way to really, show your support for this cause, or else it's really not worthwhile because you're not putting 100% effort into it. But the thing about it is, it's nearly impossible to avoid animal byproducts altogether. To have a completely, by definition, pure vegan lifestyle is nearly impossible because animal byproducts are everywhere, and you never really know where they're going to come from. And so if you really, really wanted to take it seriously, you have to know everything the animals have ever been a part of, and you have to basically abstain yourself from all of that. And so that's what this episode is kind of dedicated to, just kind of showing that that's really not an easy task to do. And so we're going to kind of go through the list. I have two lists here. One of pretty common uses for animal byproducts that most people know, and we'll kind of go through that one pretty quickly because, like I said, a lot of you should already kind of know that one. That's stuff that you're taught as kids, and then we'll go over some uncommon uses for animal byproducts that a lot of people don't really know about, that aren't too familiar with, and so I think that it'd be kind of an interesting contrast. Interesting contrast to see exactly what uses animals have in their daily lives that they don't really recognize. And so that maybe this will kind of give you more of an appreciation for animals, and more of appreciation for the processing of animals, because it will kind of just show that we're not just wasting everything. I mean, I've gone through processing plants, and I watched from the point where that cow was slaughtered to the point where all the meat gets distributed, after they do all the cuts and everything, after the meat gets all grinded up and sent down to the burger joints and everything, and they do not waste a single scrap of meat. Everything is used. The hide is used, horns, hooves, bones, all the meat, all the organs, all the intestines, and it's very gross, and so it's all used, though. They don't waste any of it, and so it's kind of interesting to see how that whole process goes down, because a lot of people think that you just take the meat off of them and the rest of it just gets scrapped, and that's not at all the case. They don't waste anything. Everything gets used, and that's the point that's really important that people understand, is that animals aren't just being abused and neglected and taken for granted just so we can eat them. They basically drive a majority of the important things that we use in our daily lives. A lot of the things that people don't even really recognize them for, but that doesn't mean they're any less important. So let's just jump into these lists here, and we'll kind of just go down the line. We'll start with the common ones. Kind of the first thing you're taught as a kid is that leather comes from the skin of cows or the hide of cows, and it's not necessarily their skin, but it's actually like their skin and their hair and like the whole hide, but you learn it's their skin. But basically leather comes from cattle, and this leather can go on to make footballs. It can make clothing. Clothing can also be made out of sheep or wool, or sheep wool, or other hair for other animals, and just pelts, leather, hides, all that kind of stuff is all used for various like clothing, and like we talked about earlier, the seats in cars, and there's a lot of uses for leather. There's a lot of uses for just animal hides in general. I mean, we also have glue. Glue is made from horse or cattle skin. The skin is very, like, I don't know exactly how they do it, but they can process it in a way that makes it very sticky, and that's how they create most glues. And so that'd be kind of interesting to see if they made a vegan glue. I'm not sure if they do. They probably do. They have vegan everything. But a vegan glue would just be glue that wasn't made with horse or cattle skin. Dog food and I think cat food too is made from scrap meat, meat that's not very edible for humans. They just turn into food for pets. I mean, actual food that we eat is obviously a byproduct of the animal, but that's kind of just, everyone knows that one. Medicine. Medicine is made from insects and animal fat, and it's tested on animals, and so basically you really can't live without certain medicines, because a majority of medicines were either composed of animal parts or insects, or they're tested on animals in some way. So it's hard to kind of avoid medicine altogether. I mean, if you get sick, what are you going to do? Makeup. A lot of makeup is made from animal fat, and it's tested on animals. I know they have vegan makeup. I'm not sure if that's. I'm assuming that's not made of animal fat, and I know it hasn't been tested. That's kind of the big deal with vegan makeup, is that it hasn't been tested on animals before. So I guess that's kind of a loophole. Gummy bears, marshmallows, Jello, like kind of like chewy candy, sweets. They're all made from the bones and fat of cattle. A lot of those like gelatin-like substances are made from cattle bones and fat. Obviously, milk comes from dairy cows, goats. Any animal that produces milk that's edible, we take dairy from them. Manure, we get manure from cattle and other livestock, and that's used as fertilizer for a lot of animals. And so it's like, again, nothing gets wasted from these animals. Everything that comes out of them, everything that we get off of them, everything that goes inside them, it all gets used. Transplants, I mean, you have swine hearts that are being transplanted to humans, because swine and human had the most similarities in terms of their internal structure. And so you have you kill a pig and take its heart and give it to a human. That way they if they need a heart transplant, and it more often than not works. I mean, obviously there's a risk that it's not going to work, that the body will just refuse to accept it, won't cooperate with it, and that always happens too. But you know, you have organ transplants. Fish oil, I mean, obviously comes from fish, but just like a lot of different foods and clothing and just day-to-day things that we use, those are all things that most people pretty much know by now come from animals. But then we get into the interesting part of this list, the second list, and these are the more uncommonly known uses of animal byproducts. Not that they're uncommon uses, but it's not as common that people know about this. So one example is beer. Beer and other alcohols like it contain a chemical a chemical called isinglass, and this chemical is found in the bladders of fish, and it helps with the fermentation of the beer. So if you have beer, I'm not sure if there's a vegan variety of this. I think that there is actually, but if you have beer, then the chemical in the beer that actually helps ferment it, it comes from fish bladders. So you know, you can't really say that you're. It's like the whole. There was a joke about an alcoholic saying he's gonna try going gluten free, and his buddy asked him, so you're gonna stop drinking beer? And he's like, I don't think I know what gluten is. So it's like people don't really know what's in what they're actually drinking or eating. And beer is an example of this. I mean, beer has chemicals from fish bladders, and maybe there's another source of this isinglass stuff that's not from fish bladders, but fish bladders tend to be the primary source of it for most people that are brewing beer. Perfume, a lot of perfumes, especially the ones that have a vanilla scent to them, or foods that have a vanilla flavoring to them, artificial flavoring to them, contain a chemical called castoreum, and castoreum is often found in beavers and what's called their castor sacs, which is a sac that is located between their pelvis and tail, and in these castor sacs are castoreum. It's a chemical that makes things smell and taste like vanilla, and so if you have perfume. And I know that there's vegan perfume as well because they don't want to test it on animals or whatever, but I'm not sure if that vegan perfume is castoreum free or not. I'm assuming it would be because they have to kind of go into that kind of depth to prove that it's vegan, but I mean, you could slap a vegan label on it and the vegans will buy it and without actually checking it. So it's kind of just one of those things. Plastic bags and just plastic in general. A lot of different types of plastic are made. They contain chemicals called slip agents, and these slip agents are derived from animal fat. A lot of animal fats are combined with different polymers to create these plastics and these plastic bags, and so a lot of things are made from plastic, and so it kind of just, you know, I know that not all plastics are made from animal fat, but animal fat is a component that is used to make plastic. So it's like, you know, how do you avoid using plastic? Plastic is everywhere, and how do you know if that plastic has animal fat in it or not? And I mean, same thing with laundry detergent. Laundry detergent contains chemicals that are composed of cattle, sheep, and horse fat mixed with ammonium. How do you know which one has it and which one doesn't? They don't really list in the ingredients cattle, sheep, and horse fat, and maybe they do. I never really checked the labels of a laundry detergent bottle, but I would assume that they wouldn't mix that kind of stuff in there and tell you that it's in there. But I'm pretty sure there's not a vegan laundry detergent. I'm pretty sure a lot of people don't know that laundry detergent contains animal fats either, though. Sugar is created. Well, obviously, sugar itself exists, and you know, glucose exists as a chemical, but or as a compound. But this, the white powdery sugar that we all know and use every day, is created by bone char, which is a granular material, and it's derived from animal ashes. So after they burn the animals and create ashes out of them, they derive this stuff called bone char, and they use it to filter and bleach out the sugar to make it the white color that we know it as. And so that's kind of interesting. So the actual bone isn't inside the sugar, but bone char, animal ashes are actually used to filter out and make sugar white. Nail polish contains a chemical called guanine, and the guanine is often found in fish scales, usually herring. I think I've heard this one before, nail polish being from fish scales, but that's another one that I think falls into the makeup department where they have vegan makeup. I'm sure they have vegan nail polish as well. A lot of these are made from fat. So crayons are, they actually contain animal fat, and I know for a fact, well, maybe there's something out there weird, but I'm pretty sure there's no vegan crayons. But crayons are they are a plasticky material substance, but it is mixed with animal fat, and that's where that animal fat, that's where that kind of that plasticky film on the crayon comes from. as the animal fat. And so same thing with cake mixes. Some cake mixes contain beef fat, and a lot of people don't know that, but that beef fat just kind of helps keep the structure of that thing together. And so they really can't. Well, I mean, I guess they could. They have vegan cake mixes, but it's like how many people actually know that beef fat is in their cake mixes? They just know the cake is fat. Red candy. We talked about this a little bit earlier with the gummy candies, but red candy is actually made from bugs, surprisingly. A lot of red candies are made from this powder called carmine, or carmine maybe, and this powder is produced by crushing and drying out these things called red cochineal. I'm horrible at pronouncing this. Cochineal beetles, and these red cochineal beetles, if you crush them up and grind them out and let them dry out, then they create this carmine. That's what usually makes your red candies, like your red, like your cough drops. I would assume are made from this stuff, and a lot of, I know cough drops aren't candy, but like that same kind of structure would produce a lot of your red, kind of like your red typical hard candies. Cigarettes are the hemoglobin from pig blood is often used to filter cigarettes. And then here's one that I actually find kind of interesting. Actually, I'll end with that one. Before that one, paintbrushes are commonly labeled to have camel hair when they're actually cattle hair. So it might say camel hair on your paintbrush. It's not actually camel hair. It's hair from cows and bulls and steers and stuff. The last one I really want to get to here, though, is fire extinguisher fluid. And this is a big deal because during the whole argument with the mayor, and again, not to throw the mayor under the bus or anything, but just to kind of show the point we were trying to make here, the mayor was a firefighter. And one of his biggest arguments was that as a firefighter, his job depended on accidents and going and fixing them. And as mayor, his job depended on taxpayers and his people. And he basically wouldn't admit that his job depended on agriculture. Well, this was actually this fire extinguisher fluid fact I found on an old paper I took from the Tulare County Fair a couple years back that had a list of all these byproducts that are made from beef cattle, and one of them was fire extinguisher fluid. And what's kind of crazy about it is the keratin found in cattle hooves are actually used in fire extinguisher fluid to help bind the foam together and make it more resistant to fire. And so it makes it stronger, it makes it able to absorb the heat better and just kind of just burn out the fire a lot faster. And so it's kind of interesting that he's a firefighter and he says his job doesn't depend on ag when literally the thing that puts out the fires is made of cattle hooves. And so it's kind of just like one of those things, again, not to throw him under the bus or not to say anything bad about him or anything, but it's just he just was very adamant about the fact that his job didn't only depend on ag. And it doesn't only depend on ag, but it obviously does depend on ag to a certain extent. And our entire lives and all of our jobs and everything that is going on in the world depends on agriculture. And this goes along with the whole the argument against the vegans that they say that we should have an entirely vegan lifestyle, that we should live without the abuse of animals, and that we should live without manipulating and extracting animal body parts just to waste them. We don't waste anything. As you can see, animal fat and bones and hooves and hair and hides and meat and all that stuff, it goes everywhere. I mean, everywhere finds a use for animal parts. Manure gets used out in the fields again. Nothing from an animal is ever wasted. And so it's kind of just a ridiculous statement to say that we waste animal products. We waste food, but that's not the same thing. We hardly ever waste animal products. It's used somewhere. And that's kind of the problem with the whole adaptations of vegan varieties of everything now. Is that, I mean, they're still small enough in number that it's not going to affect anything, but as the years go by, if more and more vegan stuff gets produced, all of that animal stuff, all the animal byproducts are going to be wasted because they're not going to need it anymore. Or if they do, nobody's going to buy it, so they're not going to stop. You're going to stop producing it, and then you are going to start wasting animal byproducts, and then it's just going to lead to this big old domino effect of wasting and wasting and wasting until all we have left is just the meat on the animal, and it's just, it can't go on like this. So the reason I kind of wanted to go over this particular segment in this episode is because animals are vital to our survival. That's how it's always been. That's how it will always be. I mean, way back in the day, there's a weed called shepherd's purse that I learned about when I was in my agronomy class or agronomy judging team, I suppose. And it's called shepherd's purse because the leaves on it look like little hearts. But what they actually are supposed to resemble is, if you turn them upside down, they're supposed to resemble what a shepherd's purse would have been like. So way back in the day when shepherds were still, had to walk out with their flock every day, they had a purse that they kept all their coins and change and things in, and that purse was made from the sack of a male of a ram. They castrate a ram and they keep the sack, and that was their purse. It was the shepherd's purse. And so even way back in the day, even way back before, back with the Native Americans, they used animal byproducts for everything. I mean, animal byproducts have always been an important part of our society. It'd be nearly impossible to completely avoid animals altogether, to avoid using any kind of animal product. And the funny thing about it is, these vegans just sit there and just preach all day about how they absolutely have to go all vegan. You cannot wear leather, you cannot wear fur, you cannot drive a car with leather seats because that's hypocritical and that you're not being pure vegan. Well, how many of them actually know that by taking medicine, then you're supporting the killing of insects, you're supporting, the use of animal fat, or if you're eating red candy, or if you're coloring with crayons, if you're using nail polish, if you're using laundry detergent, if you use sugar, if you use plastic bags or plastic of any kind, if you use perfume or drink beer, that you're actually supporting animal agriculture, this thing that they say is so evil and so dark and so, cruel. It's pushing everything in society forward. Everyone likes to glorify technology, and technology is definitely a thing to glorify, but it's just kind of funny to see how much animal byproducts really play a role in society. They kind of just come in and they just, they take over. Not to say take over in a negative way, but they play a much larger role than most people like to give them credit for. I think that's something that shouldn't be ignored for very long. It's something that people need to kind of accept and appreciate, is that animal byproducts are there for a variety of reasons. I mean, it goes much further than just creating footballs and leather seats and eating your steak at night and your dog has a bone to chew on. It goes much further than that. I mean, how many of you would have known that plastic bags are made from animal fat and skin and bones and whatever else? I mean, that's just not something that a lot of people just know off the top of their head, and that's why we do these segments. I want more educational, fun fact segments that kind of just promote this kind of stuff. That way people are more informed and have a better understanding of agriculture in ways that they never really understood it before. And it doesn't matter how much you know about agriculture. It doesn't matter how much you know about anything. There's always more to learn. And so that's why we do these little fun fact episodes, because they're not, it's just me talking. They're not interviews. We don't have another person here to kind of converse with, but that's going to change pretty soon. But they're just kind of, nice to really listen to something that you never really would have thought about before. And if you're one of those people like me that likes to challenge the ideas of people that don't support agriculture, this kind of helps out your case as well. And again, none of this is meant to be any kind of shot towards vegans, any kind of shot towards a former mayor, any kind of shot towards people that don't support the use of animal byproducts. But it's kind of just one of those things that's supposed to open your eyes a little bit and kind of show you, hey, this is happening too. It's not just we're eating steaks and we're wearing leather coats. It's that, we're advancing technology. We're using plastics. We're using, all these different, we have sugar purifiers or not purifiers, filters, and like all these different things made from animals. And so it's just, how are you going to promote both messages effectively? You can't. You have to promote the message that makes the most sense, and you have to be the most intellectually honest with yourself and with everyone else around you. And that's that animals are never going to go away. Animal agriculture is never going to go away because it can't. We depend on it way too much for that to happen. And so that being said, I'd just like to thank all of you so much for watching. We're going to close the episode here because I don't think that we have anything else to really add here. And like I said, we're going to have interviews coming up in the next couple weeks. We're going to try to get all that lined out. We're going to have all you guys, back on track to listening to our regular scheduled programming. We're going to have, ag issues back on the way. We're going to bring in some more FFA kids for some more FFA interviews. We're going to be bringing out these fun fact episodes every once in a while, not too often. We're going to try to not have them every single week anymore. But I hope you guys are enjoying it as much as I am. I really love doing this kind of research. It's very fun and very just kind of, hey, I didn't know that before. And so, yeah, I'd just like to thank all you so much for watching and or listening and tuning in. And yeah, so thank you guys, and don't forget, if you ate today, thank the farmer.